It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out, trying again. Tonight's guest is my friend Tracy Coenen. She's known as Divorce Money Guide. There she is. We've done a few interviews and collabs to met for real in a couple of months ago in Nashville. Neither of us had planned on it, and it was so much fun to hang out with her. And there she is. Yay!
Ooh, I was worried for a minute because my app crashed and it was weird. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Yeah, I was just introducing you and saying that we had done stuff before, and then we both ended up at the Amicable Divorce Networks convention conference in March, and neither of us expected it. And you are so funny in real life. Chris and I say Tracy's such a hoot because you seem more serious in a lot of your stuff, but you are just hysterical, and it was so much fun to get to know you better and have well, on my part, a disgusting gluten-free donut when you got to enjoy some good.
Yeah, we went to this super awesome donut place, which, by the way, I went to every single morning that I was there because the donuts were so good. And Lisa's got to do gluten-free donuts, and they were the most awful looking little things. They looked like little rocks. It wasn't good. I felt bad eating my glorious, glorious, fabulous donuts.
I know, I know. But anyway, maybe one day I'll figure out a better way to do donuts. I got to find a gluten-free jelly donut, but a good one. But anyway, Tracy, thanks so much for coming on. I love seeing you, and we have a lot to talk about, especially because I got a copy of your book when we met in real life, and I actually read it and annotated it and went through and came up with a bunch of questions and then lent it to my friend and promptly lost my questions, which got separated. But I have new questions because I took notes. So before we even start with you introducing who you are, the theme of the quote from your book, "This is so much bigger than I imagined," totally resonated with me. Can you talk about how it relates to divorce and money overall in just a minute, and then introduce yourself? This is so much bigger than I imagined. Oh my God. $100,000 divorce.
Right? I think that most people going into divorce, certainly there's negativity surrounding the situation, and everyone's kind of a little bit suspicious, but no one wants to believe that their spouse is doing something with the money, shady, etc. They're like, I wonder what he might be doing, and there's suspicions there, but they don't know where to start and don't know how to start unraveling whatever might be happening. And so I used to talk a lot. I started the Divorce Money Guide 2 years ago, and we immediately started talking a lot about, is there hidden money? Find the money that's hidden. Is there fraud going on in your marriage? And while people understood what that meant, and that did create some sort of emotional impact, also I think most people think, well, no, there's not necessarily fraud in my marriage. I found that a more helpful message was, you need to know the money in your marriage before you settle. And so even if you don't think there's fraud, even if you know nothing about fraud, you need to know the money. Once you dig into the money, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, probably in about 80% of divorces, there's so much more going on than they ever could have imagined. And it's so much bigger than I imagined, right?
I know, and in 99% of abusive relationships, usually there's some type of financial abuse too.
It's such an easy tool to control someone with. And in most marriage, there is one spouse who clearly has more financial power and has more say-so over the money. And there's a variety of reasons. And it doesn't matter the gender. It doesn't matter how much money you make as a family. It's just true that in almost every marriage, there's one person who has a clear advantage, clear control over the money, and it makes a really easy way to control someone. Do what I say, or you're not going to get the money you need to pay a bill. Do what I say, or I'm going to ruin your credit. Do what I say, or the kids aren't going to be able to be enrolled in the activity, right?
Yeah, yeah. So now, Tracy, how about you formally introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
I'm forensic accountant extraordinaire. I've been doing this for more than 25 years, investigating fraud, finding money in all sorts of different cases. So most of what I do is in the corporate world where executives are stealing or companies are engaging in shenanigans and harming each other financially. But a piece of what I do is in the divorce space. That is typically for wealthy people because they have really complicated money issues. But I created the Divorce Money Guide 2 years ago to help the average person who is going through divorce, who probably doesn't need a forensic accountant, even though if you go in any of the support groups online, someone says, oh my gosh, I think money might be disappearing. The first thing someone will chime in on the thread with is, you need a forensic accountant. The truth is you need to investigate what's going on with the money. But in 95% of divorces, you don't need a forensic accountant because it's not going to be that complicated. I can show you exactly where to look to see if there is something shady going on.
Before you go on, what is a forensic accountant? Like, what's the difference between an accountant and a forensic accountant?
Right. So think of an accountant as being someone who records transactions for a company or looks at transactions and verifies that they were recorded correctly. I am a fraud investigator. So I am looking at the transactions that were recorded and saying, is that what really happened? Where did the money really go? Or, well, you recorded all these transactions. Can you tell me the story of where did the money, what happened with the money? And they probably are like, not really. So a lot of what I do involves tracing money. So I am tracing it through whatever that web is. So if there are multiple bank accounts, I'm looking at that and saying, okay, this money went from this account and then to this account, and then it got spent on this. So I do a lot of that kind of thing.
Fun. Well, you're talking to an audience now, but especially later as they watch the recording of this, of people whose exes are usually hiding assets and feel entitled to do so. So I know one of the things that you talked about in your book too is something called financial infidelity, and you'll get into this whole course that you're going to be doing soon, which is very exciting. You said that 53% of people surveyed said they have money secrets, but only 27% said they have committed financial infidelity. That seems like it's not matching up, but what is financial infidelity? Right.
So financial infidelity is any lie that you're telling your partner about the money. And that could be an outright lie, or that could be a lie of omission where you're keeping information from them. So if you have an account they don't know about, if you are spending on a credit card and they're not aware of that, if you are violating agreements that you have about the money, we won't spend more than $1,000 without talking to each other first and agreeing that that's an okay expenditure. All of that can be financial infidelity. And you correctly point out, if you've got 53% of people saying they've kept money secrets, but only 20% saying they've committed financial infidelity, there's a disconnect there. People don't necessarily think that money secrets equate to financial infidelity.
Well, that's the whole thing with lying by omission.
Right.
People think, well, if I'm not saying it, then I'm not lying, right? Because I'm not saying it.
Or if
I mean, I'm thinking
she didn't ask the right question. She asked that question and I answered it, but I know what she really wanted to know, but she didn't ask it. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Gosh. All right. So of course, in my own situation, there was a lot of financial infidelity and my ex owned a lot of property. And one thing that he would do, because I always think of what does financial infidelity look like? And you mentioned some things, was he had a lot of his mail being sent to his sister's address. So I had no idea what was going on. There were loads of credit cards, secret accounts. I had no idea. Most of them had not been paid. There were late fees, there were interest fees, like who knew what were on them. And as we separated and I started trying to find things, it was like everywhere I turned, there was more and more and more. And accounts that would have like one little charge on it that was made that just was never paid, that just kept growing and growing in interest. It was mind blowing.
Did he have some BS story for why he had statements sent to his sister's house?
He said, oh, it's because we own real estate together, so it's just easier.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
And when the same thing with the tax returns. Like he said, oh, this is our family's tax return, and me and my sister do all the stuff with our property separately. And later I found out no. And I wasn't looking at the tax returns. I was just signing, and you can imagine what was going on in those tax returns.
They make up stories to explain things. And I always tell my clients, step back and ask yourself, does that really make sense?
Oh.
Right. He didn't need to send those statements to his sister's house. They should have come to your house like everything else. And if his sister needed to see something, then he could share it with her. And I find that people in their marriages, it's like they want to believe these stories because they don't want to believe that their spouse is lying to them. But, I sometimes say, if your girlfriend was telling you this story, what would you tell her? Would you be like, come on?
Right.
Of course you would, right?
Yeah, like this is again bringing up floods of memories. There was one time he asked me to get something from his drawer, and I found a roll, like a stack of cash. And I was like, what is this? He goes, oh, well, I don't have the debit card to our bank account. Like as if like, see how much I trust you. Like, I don't need it. He said, that's the money that you gave me from this. I was like, no, it's not. Like, I never gave you like wads and wads of cash. Like,
Right.
why wouldn't you have the debit account, like a card to our account? So I never thought, oh, there's a whole bunch of other accounts that he had that I certainly didn't know about. But yes, the lies. And that's something that you also mentioned in your book that I can relate to so well, and all of our clients can. And that is like, why didn't I see this sooner?
Because we trust our spouses. That is a fundamental piece of marriage. You love them, you trust them, you think you're in it together. They tell you, I'm going to take care of it all. Don't you worry. And you believe it because you know that that's what marriage is supposed to be. It's supposed to be that partnership where you can trust each other. And then you see some little signs, and you're probably going to convince yourself, oh no, that it's nothing. I'm just worrying about nothing. You tell yourself stories, and who knows, maybe you're married to a gaslighter who also, if you see some signs and you ask a question, they're going to, make up a story. They're going to have you questioning your own memory, like the thing with the cash. He's like, oh, you gave me that cash. Well, no, I didn't.
But like, but did I?
If you're right,
but is there any way?
Right.
I know it's horrible. So the other thing that's a big theme in our clients' lives, especially during their divorces, are hidden assets, which is an indicator, obviously, of high conflict divorce. And I love the quote. I don't remember who said it, probably many people, our clients' exes included. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine too. So I know that in your book, you also talked about common justifications that people have for being dishonest about money. What are some of the ones that our people should be listening to hear to think, this sounds like something Tracy talked about?
Well, gosh. So if we've got a husband who's being dishonest about money or hiding money, we might hear him say, well, my wife is really bad with money and she would spend it all if I wasn't setting some of it aside. So I'm just trying to protect her and protect our family, right?
Oh, wow.
Then there's the really, really common of, well, I'm the one who earned this anyway. She was sitting at home while I went to work. By the way, if she was sitting at home, most likely she was raising your children, and that was a family decision that was made. If you don't have children that are being raised and your wife is at home and not working outside of the home, also a family decision. I don't know what your reasoning was for that, but that's a family decision. And that's what you agreed to. Sorry, when you get married, your earnings are our earnings and my earnings are our earnings. And so saying, I earn this, it's mine, it's so common, but it's not reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's also making me think back to the dynamic in my own relationship where my ex always had it like, even though we had a joint account, well, one of the accounts that I knew about, but he would say, well, that's your money and this is my money. And so I think we should use your money, Lisa, to pay the household bills. And then I think we should use my money to put into my retirement. That's going to be our retirement when we both retire, which of course didn't happen.
Right. When you split, that became a problem, didn't it?
Yeah.
I am perfectly fine with couples who keep separate money, as long as there's transparency about it and proper agreements about it. So you have your accounts, I have my accounts, and we're going to get our household bills paid this way. And that we've come up with a way that is equitable, not necessarily equal. What I see in marriages is one spouse makes 4 times what the other one makes, but they're both putting in the same amount towards family bills. Oh, we each pay half of the family bills. Well, that's probably not equitable. Or like you say, I mean, I've been involved in divorces where one spouse has insisted that the other spouse their money goes to pay living expenses, while this spouse's money is accumulated as an asset. And then when they do break up, it's like, well, we agreed to keep money separate, and my separate money is over here in this pile, and that's not yours. So
Totally.
it's really shady. And so if people are going to keep separate money, I think it's really important to know what you're getting into. So I'm a huge fan, prenups for everyone. And you each have to have your own attorney to have a valid prenup anyway. And your attorney can advise you about what your risks are. In that prenup, you can specify how we're going to pay family bills and how we're going to manage the finances during the marriage. And your attorney can say, hey, wait a second, if your money goes to all the living expenses, then here's the risk you could run down the road.
Okay, so prenup is before you get married. What about a postnup?
Yes. So postnups are great too.
What is a postnup exactly?
Right.
Just for people who don't.
Prenups and postnups are both just contracts. That's all they are. They're a fancy name for a type of contract. A prenup is prenuptial, meaning it's a contract you enter into before you get married. A postnup is postnuptials. It's sometime after you sign the marriage contract. And both of them are agreeing how money is going to work during the marriage and in the event of a divorce. This is how we're going to split things. This is who would pay support and how that would be figured, whether you could put in your prenup that it's a set monthly amount, or you could say it's going to be calculated based on these factors. And so it's a really helpful tool. It can get as detailed as you want it to. And guess what? If you didn't do a prenup and you're married and you say, gosh, I want one of these contracts, great, you can go get a postnup. If you do have a prenup and things in your marriage have gone differently than you expected, you can actually get rid of that prenup together, agree that is null and void, and enter into a new contract, now a postnup, that has different provisions in it. And so this is something that you could modify what you agree to a bunch of different times during your marriage as your situation changes.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that a postnup might be harder to get, especially in the dynamic that our clients deal with.
Yes,
you know?
it certainly can be, because when you're high conflict, you've got one party who is seriously angling for their own benefit, and that's it. But where I see them used sometimes successfully in these high conflict situations is when there's a cheating scenario and the cheating spouse wants to reconcile. It's like, okay, well, we can talk about reconciling, but I'm going to want a postnup to protect myself in case you cheat again. And so that's one scenario where it can work really effectively.
That is great. Yeah, because you have leverage if the person has a conscience.
Right.
All right, let's talk about red flags of fraud. What are some things that people should also watch out for? It's like we started to talk about it, a little bit of things to watch for, but actual fraud.
So red flags are those warning signs that something might be going wrong with the money, that maybe there's hidden money, maybe there's inappropriate spending, maybe there's a secret account you didn't know about. Some of the really common red flags are being secretive about the money, locking your spouse out of money issues. So maybe literally locking them out of online banking, or not letting them see account statements. So like you were in the scenario where statements were going somewhere else, so you couldn't see them. Them changing their spending habits in a strange way. So if you have a spouse who never really used cash, maybe had a little bit of walking around money in their pocket, but that was about it, and just use that occasionally, oh, you needed to leave a tip or pay a valet or something like that. And now all of a sudden that spouse is going to the ATM every 2 or 3 days and withdrawing a few $100 at a time, $500 at a time, and you can't imagine what they might be spending that money on. So those changes in behavior and the things that are exerting some kind of power and that leave you in the dark, those are like the biggest red flags ever.
Yeah. I remember an interview from a few years ago with a guy named James Pete, who's a certified fraud investigator in Washington State, and he said that you should watch for when they do take withdrawals if they're round numbers. He said round numbers mean that they're hiding the money, because if they're actually paying something, there's usually tax. So when it's round numbers,
Right.
something is being extracted to be hidden specifically.
Right.
Have you heard something
And
like
I
that?
think the biggest thing that someone can pay attention to is a change in behavior. We always did it this way, and now something else, we're doing it a different way, and it doesn't feel right. So an easy example is, we have the den in our house where there's a desk where we have a computer that we use, and we keep some records there, and we have a drawer, and the tax returns were always in that drawer, and now they're not anymore. Or the bank statements always came in the mail once a month, and now they don't anymore. The example I mentioned about he didn't use cash, but now all of a sudden he is using cash. Or, I wasn't involved with the finances before, but if I asked a question about something or if an issue came up, we talk about it, it was no big deal. But now he's secretive about stuff, or if I ask a question, he gets really defensive. So changes in behavior are things that I want you to key in on. And those changes when they feel kind of icky. I think we all have really good intuition. And so when it feels kind of icky, that's when you should really take notice.
Yeah. And that I'd say for everything with people, behaviors, money, when something in your gut is saying it feels wrong, like pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
We always dismiss stuff like that, and it comes back to bite us.
I think women especially, and as you know, in the divorce context, I work more so with women than I do with men. I think women are more likely to doubt themselves and to make excuses for things and want it all to be okay. And that is on the financial side of a divorce or potential divorce, that is truly to their detriment. I'm a huge fan. What you got to do is, the minute something feels off, I want you to start gathering information and protect yourself. Protect yourself is the mantra that I have been shouting from the rooftops for a couple of years now.
Yeah, makes sense. So in your book, you also talked about the thieves. There were several different thieves. Can you talk about the you don't need to go through all five if you
right?
Yeah.
Well, so the theme. Okay, so for people, the book, which is right there,
right here.
Find Me the Money, it's a short book, actually, so it's a pretty easy read. And it's the story of Jackie, who is getting divorced. Her husband had an affair, and she is now thinking, gosh, what happened to our family's money? I don't know. It seems like we should have more. I'm not really sure if he was having an affair. Was he spending money in the affair? What was going on? And so that's the basic context. Is I put it in a story format to make it really easy to read, enjoyable to read, but yet you could learn something out of it.
And relatable, Tracy, it was so relatable.
Thank you. Well, and that's it too. So Jackie, the character in the book, is not one client of mine. She's really, a combination of a lot of clients that I've had. I've, worked with hundreds of clients over the years, and I wanted people to be able to relate and hear the common themes in a marriage where something's going on with the money. So within that story, we talk about the 5 secret thieves that are present in a divorce situation. So, for example, one of them is shame. I think that is probably the most common emotion that people feel in divorce. Mm-hmm. They're ashamed that their marriage ended. They're ashamed that they didn't know more, that they weren't paying attention to the money. And I think many times when you're getting divorced, your spouse, soon to be ex-spouse, uses shame as a tool.
Definitely. Absolutely. What about overwhelm? Since that's one of the most common words that we hear from our clients in our communities. I am completely overwhelmed. I feel paralyzed. I can't even do anything. There's all this documentation that I have to get together. I just can't.
The divorce process is super overwhelming. First of all, it's a legal process, and most people getting divorced have never been involved in a legal case before, and so they have no idea what to expect. Judges and lawyers seem scary if you haven't been around it. There's lots of terminology you've never heard before. So that's like the starting point of being overwhelmed. But then you're being asked a whole bunch of questions that you have to answer in writing. You're being asked for a bunch of documents. You're getting a bunch of documents. You're supposed to go through them and see what's what. And then someone's saying, oh, when you're in high conflict and he's creating arguments and problems, document, start keeping lists of what happened and what date. There is so freaking much to do in a divorce, and that's where the overwhelm comes in. So when you look at what I've done with the Divorce Money Guide and with our various courses to help people on the financial side, one of my goals was to break it down in a way where we're like chipping away at it little by little. Follow these little steps and start to make progress.
Yeah. What are some mistakes that people make or assumptions? Other than that, it's not going to cost that much. I mean, I think of my own case where I really hesitated to get out of the relationship, even when it was like way more painful to stay than to go, because I thought, well, I don't have $10,000 to spend on a divorce, and it cost 10 times that amount in year one. And you know, Tracy, it's been 10 years in the legal system for me, but luckily I always say I've saved well over $1 million
Right.
by representing myself, but that's a whole other story. But so I know one of the mistakes people probably make is thinking this isn't going to, this is going to be too expensive, or it's going to cost this amount of money only.
Right. Yeah, if you're hesitating to get divorced because of the cost, what I'm telling you is you're just delaying it. I mean, there's going to be a cost, and you're just delaying when that happens. I think it's wise to be prepared before you jump into the divorce, of course, and to try to make some arrangements for the financial part of it. But if you want to know mistakes in divorce, the number one, most common, biggest, most costly mistake, worst ever, are you ready? Is settling without having all the information. So I know you want to get your divorce over with, and I'm not a fan of settling I don't want you to drag on your divorce, certainly, but I also don't want you to settle before you have all the information. What happens, especially in high conflict divorces, is you'll hear something like, this is my offer, and this is going to be my best offer, and if you don't take it, I'm pulling my offer, and then we're going to go full bore litigation. And what usually goes along with that offer is they haven't given you all the documents they're supposed to. And so you're saying, gosh, I probably only have about 2/3 of what they were supposed to give me. I know there might be a couple of other accounts out there, but I'm afraid for this to get dragged on. Maybe I'll just agree. And there's a reason why they're not producing the documents. There's a reason why they're hiding it. And it's not because the reason is for their benefit, not yours.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. And I think about our clients who are in these divorces that take years, and so they are exhausted. And we always say your ex's goal is to wear you down and bleed you dry financially.
Yes.
And our goal is to not let that happen. And especially when there's a lot involved, especially when there's a business involved that you share, all kinds of things that you have so much to lose, it's important to learn negotiation skills and to think this is just the beginning. Like when they make this offer, this is probably the lowest, like the worst offer that you're going to get, unless they feel really guilty about the cheating. Maybe our clients' exes tend not to really have a conscience or empathy.